Hello and welcome to Sound Like, where today we're going to be looking at Break It To Me. This is my personal favourite song off of the Simulation Theory album, and today we are going to be using the Manson Chaos guitar for kind of obvious reasons. It's the only reason I use this guitar most of the time, because either the pickup for a specific song or the Chaos pad itself. In this example, it's kind of both. This is a drop B tuned song, just the lower B. I've seen people say this is tuned to open B, or that Matt recorded this on a 7-string guitar. You're perfectly fine with it just being in a 6-string and drop B tuning. Don't worry about open tunings or anything like that at all. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to sound like Break It To Me, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and comment down below about what you might like in this video or what you might like to see in a future video. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, so here we are at Pedalcam for Break It To Me. So with the addition of the new well, for me, this is like 5-year-old technology at this point. For me, with the Boss ES8, I have been programming some song-specific banks or presets within this, and I've made one for Break It To Me. So we can go through the 5 different individual presets I have. The other remaining 7 buttons, which are normally assigned for presets, aren't really being used, though I do use 7 as my special button, which should just be adding in the phase 90. So there are 5 presets. So the first one, let's have a look. It is just loop 2, which is my overdrive distortion. Then number 2 is 4, which is just the blues driver. 3, which is the blues driver and the my delay. And finally at 5 is the solo, where I combine the overdrive distortion and my big muff for just a wider sound. And I believe if we go into this sound, you might not be able to see it here, but the Boss ES8 has the ability to have a parallel loop, or kind of a parallel circuit, where you can separate your input from the guitar into two mixes within this, and affect those differently. So one side has the overdrive distortion and the other side has the big muff being affected separately. Then they're both combined, so it avoids having one sound and then having the output of the Boss overdrive distortion being affected by the big muff. They're being affected separately and then combined. I kind of prefer that sound to kind of thicken it out. So those are the sounds for Break It To Me. So patch number 1, which is just the riff. Let's just go to the main menu. So Break It To Me is the riff, so again, just the overdrive distortion. Now I've got this leaning far more towards the overdrive kind of sound side of things for this song. It's very different from kind of what's usually going on for the rest of the songs in this album and kind of this era particularly. It's more kind of the way I see it and the way I tune my pedals, if you will, to it is more distortion. But because this song is very Rage Against the Machine, it really fits to have more of an overdrive sound than a distortion sound. And the drive is at 2 o'clock, where normally for me I have it at about 3, maybe 4, kind of pulling away from that, so you have a bit more clarity of your sound, and it'll sound something like this. Kind of pretty clear, kind of almost kind of a standard kind of overdrive sound. I really enjoy it. It's not kind of too fancy, it's just a solid kind of guitar sound to work with, and it really helps to kind of bring out the kind of grungier tone of the lower B. I absolutely love this sound and I can't get enough of it, so I do kind of like to use this sort of sound for a lot of, say, Rant Against the Machine songs or kind of earlier Muse stuff, but it works fantastically for Break It To Me. That's number 1. I'm going to try and fly through the rest of these. Number 2, which is the verse sound, which is just the blues pedal, sounds like this. Now, the way I play it, the verse, I just kind of mirror the vocal line, so I don't want the guitar sound to be kind of trying to distract from that. I just want it to complement what's being sung on the vocals, so that's what's going on there. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Even though on the gain is turned all the way up to really get the most out of these. Now, number 3, which is the chorus, still uses the blues pedal, but then I bring in some delay that's tapped into the right tempo of the song, which is kind of a big advantage of saving song-specific presets within the Boss ES8, and it sounds like this. Now the delay helps to kind of elongate those sounds. It works really, really well to offset what's going on from the blues pedal for the verse. We'll get more into the specifics in that sound later on. Number 4 is this kind of like whammy section, whammy part, which is the overdrive distortion and the whammy. We won't go into that at the moment because it's just the same distortion, but then the whammy is just doing what the kind of the synth is doing, and it's just a choice for me. And then the solo on its own, it sounds like this. It's just out there as a kind of a crazier noise, bit more kind of more of a low end grunge than just the overdrive distortion, but by bringing in the big muff. Now it has, in the way I hear it, has a lot. It brings a lot of the good to kind of balance out the two. The big muff sounds better on the lower B, but the overdrive distortion sounds better for the chord. Now it kind of pulling these together because we can combine these two sounds separately than together. It works really, really well. But this only goes on during the solo, when the when I might be kind of doing kind of higher harmonic sounds with the sustainer, like this. Just as a choice, and then for the rest of the song I may even stay on that sound or go over to the kind of the riff tone. It's just nice to have options, and if you are kind of thinking about how you want to approach playing Break It To Me, because it's quite a blank canvas of a song, options are great. So that's Pedalcam done with. It was a very long one. Hopefully you understand kind of the tones that are going on there, and let's get into the song step by step with the intro and riff. So let's start at the beginning of Break It To Me. So we have just the overdrive distortion pedal sound. Sounds great. So this riff has kind of two elements to it, the kind of the bending of the chord and then leaning on that low B. So it's very simple. There's two ways you can really kind of play the chord section. You can pre-bend it and then release it, which would be like a... Or another way of doing it, which is sometimes I slip into, is to kind of do the opposite. So you start off where the chord would be, strum it, and then you quickly bend and then bring it back to its kind of normal flattened position. I would say both are great and both are acceptable. They offer kind of a very kind of slightly different characteristics. It's entirely dealer's choice to do it, or if you can even remember to do it properly. They're very quick, they're very subtle. There's not that's why there's not kind of that too much variety, that kind of too much of a difference going on. But it's nice to have options in there. But the attack on the kind of the lower B needs to kind of be sustained, kind of a very kind of a sharp, kind of in sync kind of power to it. So, and the muting of the strings after the chord is key as well to make that note stand out, and to make sure that you're hitting all the notes in that chord as well. It's a kind of a weirdly shaped power chord, I call it kind of the Scooby-Doo kind of chord in there. It's similar to what's going on in the Queens of the Stone Age's like Song for the Deaf. But it's just pulling that chord and then pulling all the way back onto a lower B, and it's pretty simple, it's very straightforward. It happens throughout the entire song. And that's it, that's the riff. It's the same like that throughout the whole thing. So that's the whole riff done in one foul swoop. So let's go on to the verse now. Right, so the verse. This, as we've looked at before, is just my blues pedal with the gain turned all the way up. The tone is kind of at 4 o'clock, which kind of gives it a nice kind of a bright kind of crispness. The pedal on its own, without the kind of the warm switch turned on, doesn't have a lot of low end to it or bottom to it. When it is engaged, it really sends the kind of pedal kind of onto some crazy amount of level boost as well, so I have to really turn that down. But I very rarely use that setting because I don't really like it. But perfectly enough, we want something that doesn't have a lot of low end grit. We just want a mid boost, and with the gain turned all the way up and the kind of the tone where it is, the level where it is, this pedal is really great for it. and the verse section will sound like this. Again, as before with the riff, it's that I played that the whole way through. It's not on the record, it's just what the vocals are doing. There may be some synths in there, but especially live, there is no guitar going on there. If you're playing this song, you want to be playing something without the whole thing, and mirroring the vocal line is a very easy trick to do if you can, especially if you've got the kind of the right sound for it. Again, that's nothing that's trying to shake up or trying to have its own sound. It's just using there as a complementary sound, and this setup works great for it. And that's it. That's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So with the verse done and the intro riff done, let's go on to the chorus. So now it's time for the chorus. Now I go to setting 3 for this, which is the blues pedal and the delay now behind it. Now it's synced in with the BPM of the song, which is 90 if you want to know. I believe I have it set to kind of quarter notes, so it should just be following, which it does. And then for this, once again, I follow the vocal melody for this because there is no guitar for this kind of live, and again there's nothing like that from what I can tell in the studio recording, unless it is a guitar it's just been heavily kind of modified, or unless I'm just being super lazy. But I do often like to follow vocal melodies. It's a cheap trick if you kind of are struggling for what you can play during a song, but on the other side it does help to kind of like boost that part of the song that's going on. It gets very nice and complementary, and playing it like this does help to get the kind of nice dynamic range within the song compared to the kind of the big kind of overdriven riff, compared to something that's quite small and kind of almost insignificant of the chorus, what you can play on the guitar. And it sounds like this, but I use the neck pickup to add some extra kind of warmth and roundness to it, and it will sound like this. That's just one example to go from the chorus straight into the riff again as it appears after the first chorus. For the second chorus, it does slightly change by just staying at that kind of higher end and then doing that descending scale. So it's like... It's not rocket science, it's just nice to have the kind of those two differences going on there. And that's it. That's the kind of that's the slight subtle differences between the two choruses that we hear. I really enjoy them, and having the deploying the neck pickup I think really helps to kind of express really what's going on there, having this kind of like moody, kind of nice, warm, well-rounded kind of feel to it. Again, comparing it to what's going on with the main riff, that's a very aggressive part of the song. Really works to kind of have a nice change or an opposite to the song in itself. So I'd strongly recommend, if you're trying to learn or play this song, really think about having a low gain part of the song and then pulling in some delay if you've got the facilities there and your pedal board or on your amp or whatever you're using. Really kind of try and bring in something like that. Maybe it's really subtle, or maybe you kind of really dose it up. Like if we bring in that same sound but I roll off the feedback but up the level, what does that sound like? It sounds kind of nice, but I'm a bit distracted by the loudness of the repeats initially, so let's do the opposite, ramp up the feedback but pull down the level. So we'll have this more subtle but more kind of apparent build of noise in there. I do like that, but adds too much of a kind of it's trying to add too much of a kind of a weird ambient sound to it. So that's why I have the feedback kind of around 12 o'clock and sort of similar with the level. So let's move on to this kind of extra kind of whammy part of it. So let's do that. So for this kind of synth section, what I do is use the whammy pedal up at 2 octaves and just kind of cross my fingers and hope for the best. Kind of figuring out the notes what are in there. It helps, it's a nice addition for the song if you're kind of potentially a little bit bored of what's going on in there, of playing the same riff over and over again. It's just a nice option or an opportunity to play something different. Again, if you've got, say, a pitch shifting pedal like the whammy that you can deploy like this. Because I need to use the treadle, I'm going to use an older version of me to play it, and so you can see what's going on. There's no trick to it, it's just the overdrive distortion, the exact same settings, but with the whammy that's in there, playing over the riff. So as we saw just then, it is just following exactly what's going on in that synth. I don't know for sure if it is actually a guitar doing that or if it is a synth. To me it sounds synthy because it's just an unnatural pitch for a guitar to reach without the aid of a whammy pedal, for example. It's perfectly reasonable if it is a guitar with a whammy pedal on it. And it's just very simple, it's just a descending scale, really works to kind of offset the kind of aggressiveness of the riff. Because of the point it appears in the song, it's very good to have something different to incorporate with the riff, otherwise it just gets a little bit boring to play. And why it's good to kind of have that as a guitarist to play as well as. I like both. Sometimes you can just do some of your solo sound if you've got a Chaos Pad, go for it if you want to try some extra sound. It's just kind of another blank canvas of try something new and different here. It's not like Stockholm Syndrome where you really should be playing that riff. So that's that section, so let's now go on to the solo that features some Chaos Pad action. Now for the solo of Break It To Me, so this kind of has 2 elements to it. One, the Chaos Pad, which is set at preset 75. This is the sound that I've used for Supermassive Black Hole, Unsustainable, there's some stuff in my own band stuff, and then kind of just messing around stuff for, or like maybe some Rage Against the Machine songs as well. Now sometimes throughout the solo I do use the guitar. It's not just the Chaos Pad, it's some kind of those higher pitched sounds from the guitar with the sustainer in it as well, which for example it's like this. It's nice to have those things complement one another, mainly leaning more towards the Chaos Pad solo. So I'm going to show you a clip now of me playing the Break It To Me solo properly. We'll kind of see and we'll look at what's going on there to kind of really identify how you can approach playing it with a Chaos Pad if you've got one, and we'll see if we can find a way of playing it without afterward. So that was the solo. It's just the way I play it. I just play around the Chaos Pad. No real determined pattern or way of playing. It's just make noise and kind of hope for the best, and then relying on those high-pitched sounds from the sustainer to kind of lift it kind of sonically even more. Now I'm not entirely sure 100% about how Matt is actually playing this in the studio version, or indeed live. There's an argument that it's something to do with the Chaos Pad. There's an argument that it's some sort of whammy effect going on there. I don't really know. I just enjoy the sound. I'm not trying to dissect it too much just because he's got access to loads more gear than I have, so I just look at this song and go, what can I do with this? I first heard this song before I got my Chaos Manson for this, and I think what I can't even remember what I used to do for it, but I think it was probably just scratching on the strings or maybe doing something with the whammy. It's just kind of looking at this song and then thinking to yourself and asking yourself, what have I got at my disposal that I can play with during the solo, if you indeed want to play something like the solo. You could do something like taking the whammy at 2 octaves up and just doing harmonics and just kind of stretching those sounds out for something a bit like this. That's just one example of just one harmonic and then just pitching it up. If, for example, you could do something a bit more Tom Morello-ish by just taking a slide and just using a kill button, for example, and then seeing what that does. I've never tried that for this solo, so it'd be like... That might work really quite well. I do enjoy that sound, especially obviously with the song it appears on, which is Fistful of Steel by Rage on their first album. There's a lot of Rage references in this song. I wonder why. It's just kind of thinking about what you've got at your disposal to kind of play with it. Unless you want, you could also then just throw your guitar straight up against the speaker on your amp and getting feedback out of that, and then just seeing what you can do. Again, maybe if you've got it at your disposal, a kill switch or anything you've got. If you've got just a guitar and a distortion or two, you will probably be quite limited with the song, but you've still got a pick and you can still scrape up the strings. It's an option. You're never really limited. Even if you've got just a distortion pedal, you've got another spare, you've got a great piece of kit in your hand the whole way through. That's never stopped some guitarists, like the Edge from U2. A lot of people will probably hate U2, but one of his signature sounds, as well as using like a Strat on the bridge and middle pickup position, he takes his pick, turns it on his side, and his pick has ridges on the inside, and he uses those to kind of get this kind of extra kind of like thicker jangly sound out of it. There's a fantastic video on YouTube with a very in-depth interview with his guitar tech. Goes through his guitars, his effects, his amps and his picks, of how he gets all these sounds. And it's a very good example of how you can take every single piece of kit that you're using and throw it at the music you're making. Another example is a great Tom Morello one where he takes the jack out of his guitar and then turns his whammy on and then just gets the feedback, well, presses his hand against the jack and then manipulating the wah to kind of get these kind of like tone changes out of it. Everything that you've got in your rig, no matter from if you've got absolute mind-blowing amounts of gear right down to just a pedal, there's loads of little tricks that you can use to create a weird sound, and especially that would work for a solo like Break It To Me. Just because I've got all this doesn't mean I can do everything, and the opposite is true. I can get loads of sounds out of this. It's worked great for guitarists, like kind of through the years out of it. Like Tom Morello has a very basic setup, which is what I originally kind of based my pedal board on, just a few effects and then just kind of going with it. The Chaos Pad is great for a load of sounds out there, but I just use it very, very occasionally. Otherwise, I would just kind of get lost in it and start relying on it too much, the way I see it. And I much prefer to use something that I can have a lot more kind of involvement with. A lot of stuff with the Chaos Pad, it's just a synth and you're just using your finger to manipulate the XY pad. It does get a bit boring, and I think that's kind of why that Matt never really overused it in his playing. He wants to kind of really get involved with the sounds, but actually physically playing the guitar, mad, I know. I'm aware that, I think that a lot of people would look at songs like Break It To Me that are kind of very, maybe effect heavy or kind of weird sound heavy, and just want to go, oh, I can't recreate sounds like that. When I play a song, especially if it's Muse, I don't try and recreate that sound. I just try and do something that can get sort of close to it, but that still has my characteristics. And why I make these videos for you guys is to kind of think, what have you got that you can approach for this? Yes, a lot of the songs that I play, I do try and recreate the sounds almost exactly like Fury with the whammy at the harmony octave up and down. just because I really like that song, and it really does work very well, and it helps boost the kind of chorus sections for it. The same with Dead Star, I like to get that octave up sound because it's a very particular sound, but on the flip side with Break It To Me, it's a very kind of ambiguous kind of sound, and it's a very good opportunity to just create whatever you want. So after this huge rant, this is just an option that you can pick. I can play this solo without the Chaos Pad and just rely on some of the kind of old school effects. I really like the slide option. After having just kind of really thought about it, I might use that sometimes. But that's the solo done. It's just a discussion to make you think about what you want to do. So that's the whole song, and then after that solo, it's just more random noises of just. Pretty simple stuff. You don't really need a sustainer circuit for this song. It's just nice if you've got it to use it. You know, if you've got a Manson, use it, great. If you've not, find something creative. You could compensate those higher pitch sounds with the whammy, just an option, or if you want to just focus on just playing the riff again, go for it. Whatever you want to do. These are just suggestions as always. So we've done the song start to finish, going through all my effects and so on. I hope you've understood that. So let's go to the outro and debrief. So that was Break It To Me. So despite all the ranting and me kind of going into way too much detail there, I hope you understood and enjoyed that one as always. It's really good to make these videos for you guys again. I've really enjoyed it. I have actually kind of missed playing this, but I really kind of needed that little break. But I've been wanting to make a video for Break It To Me for quite some time because it's a very sonically interesting song. It's kind of a bit of a blank canvas. It's got a great riff, and it's interesting because it's a drop B tuned song, and it's a good opportunity to kind of get a bit creative, a bit crazy with it. So we went through the whole thing from start to finish, the exact kind of pedals I'm using, very much relying on my overdrive distortion for the kind of the low end rumble to it, and then being another great example of dynamic range, going over to a softer tone with some delay for kind of the chorus-y stuff. It may not be something that you'd think of for this song, again, because, well, to my ear at least, that sort of sound doesn't really appear guitar-wise in the studio version. It's just an opportunity to kind of think, right, what's going on with this? How can I approach playing that to complement what's going on with the song? Or if you want to make something that's out there and kind of very flamboyant, it's totally up to you. But that's just how I play it. You can click here, I hope, to see the full cover of me playing this song, to kind of see how I'm deploying all these effects as the song goes, and hopefully it just gives you that extra bit of motivation or confidence to kind of have a go at cracking this yourself. So before we go, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and comment down below about what bit of this video that you liked, or any particular songs that you'd like to see in future, both for sound likes or covers, or any kind of specific videos that you might want me to make in future. I am still in the back of my mind thinking about making reviews for all of my pieces of kit, from all of my guitars through to all the pedals I've got, or indeed gear that I might want to get in the future, though at the moment I think I've got every piece of kit that I want. But every day there's always a new opportunity and a new excuse for new gear, so that's entirely possible. So until the next time I see you, or I tell you how to do a song or do a sound-ish like, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.